Welcome back to 8 Metal Strings. Today's video is for those people who have just got their 8-string guitars and are maybe looking on where they need to start and what essential information they need to know to get going. Now, I already have a video out that goes over a few of the difficulties that you're going to face when switching from a 6-string to an 8-string guitar, but that one can be more speculative, as if you're doing research into getting an 8-string guitar. Today's video is for those people who have made the purchase, got the guitar, and are ready to go. So if that's you, then congratulations firstly on your new instrument. It's a super exciting time, and I hope that these tips in this video can help you get going with it and have some fun. Now, there's so much you can do on the 8-string guitar, and it's almost like starting a whole new instrument over again, but the very first thing you need to do is have some fun. This just means finding tabs of your favorite riffs by your favorite bands, the ones who made you buy an 8-string guitar in the first place, and playing them. It's very easy to get overwhelmed with all the new scales and chord shapes and techniques that you might want to learn on the 8-string guitar, and it will quickly bog down your excitement for playing. So for me, when I first got this guitar, I had two riffs calling out my name. The first was Pravis by Meshuggah. And the second was Ectogenesis by Animals as Leaders. Learning these two riffs and just having some fun when I first got this guitar really set me up for some good practice sessions and got me hooked on learning it. So always remember the first rule: make sure you're having fun with what you're learning. Alright, the second thing that you're going to need to know is the standard tuning methods for the 8-string guitar. Now, there are two primary methods: F-sharp standard and drop E. So F-sharp standard is named like that because it's going to take your standard 4th tuning pattern of a 6-string guitar and just extend it up to the 7th and 8th strings. So that ends up as an F-sharp on the bass, a B on the 7th string, and then E, A, D, G, B, E, just like you'd find on a regular 6-string tuning. Now, this is the tuning that I like to stick with most commonly, and that's just because all of the structures that we know built-in fourths on the guitar are going to be the same on the new low strings. It does make it a little bit more difficult to learn the new bass notes though, as everything is shifted by 2 frets. So that can be kind of a weird little mental block at first. The second tuning is very similar. The only difference is that our low 8th string is going to be dropped down to an E. Now, the benefit of this is that all of your bass notes on the 8th string are going to be the same as on your 6-string guitar, so you won't have to relearn the roots of any chords or scales that you're learning. And it also allows you to do your one-finger power chords just like any drop tuning would. Now, of course, tuning goes much deeper than these two standard ways of doing it, but they should be enough to get you started. When you're ready to get a little more deeper into the topic, I have a whole video about it, which you can find here in the little I, and it'll also be linked down in the description. Eventually, there's going to come a point where you need to get new strings for your guitar. Now, this can be a little bit intimidating with how many different brands and custom sets there are on the market, or even the ability to make your own custom set of strings. So here are just a few things that I've learned along the way that will hopefully simplify the process for you. The easiest option, with the least amount of thinking, is always just going to be to buy a pre-made 8-string set of guitar strings. Whatever brand of guitar string that you prefer to play, whether it's Ernie Ball, Diodario, Elixir, or Fender, or KHS, or whatever it is, chances are they now have an 8-string set for you available to purchase. With the 8-string becoming more and more popular year over year, these companies have had to kind of keep up with consumer demand and make these 8-string sets available. So that is going to be the easiest way to replace your strings. Now, the second option, if you want a little bit more control over the gauge of your strings, is to make a custom set. Now, my recommendation in this scenario is to buy a 6-string set first, and then to custom order your 7th and 8th string at whatever thickness and gauge you prefer. Currently, I think I have a 9.5 to 44 gauge on my 1st to 6th string, and then my 7th string is a 0.58, and then my 8th string is a 0.74. Now, I've heard a few different times on YouTube channels to go with a 0.80 gauge on your 8th string at least, and the thicker the better, so you can drop tune and do all sorts of heavy riffs and get heavy sounds. But this kind of just makes more problems for you in the long run. Firstly, the thicker the string, the more muddy the low end can become, especially when that string starts to age a little bit and it loses its crispness. This just makes it more and more difficult to get a nice crisp, clean, and tight tone when we're trying to dial in our sound. More on that later. Secondly, when your low strings are so thick, it's going to be hard to get them to fit into the saddle and the tuning peg. you will probably actually have to take off the outer layer of the string with some pliers or something in order to get it to fit into the tuning peg so you can tune it up. I also found the intonation was impossible to get perfect when I had a 0.8 gauge on this Abasi guitar, as it just stuck up a little bit too high and didn't properly sit in the saddle. And finally, there's one more little niche problem that I've noticed with thicker strings, and that is they don't really match the rest of the set. So when you're using super light strings on your top 6, and then you have super thick ones for 7 and 8, there's a bit of a discontinuity when you're trying to do scales or passages that travel between those strings. It's going to feel like normal guitar, normal guitar, normal guitar, and then your fingertips are going to jump to these big, thick, round strings like you're jumping to a bass. That's just, for me, I don't really enjoy that feeling. It doesn't feel fluid and smooth like a homogeneous set. It kind of feels like these disparate pieces on my instrument that I have to navigate. So just one other thing to take into consideration. That being said though, if you're always doing super drop low tunings and that's just what you like to do and you know you like to do that, by all means get a heavier set of strings and tune them down. While it may be a little bit more of a pain to string the strings through the tuning pegs, it will just make the tension of the strings better for playing those songs. Next, let's talk about our choices in amplifiers to get some sweet sounds out of our guitars. Now, actual amps and cabinets and pedals are always going to sound the best. They're always going to be the most responsive and have the most liveliness to them. But unless you can fork out thousands and thousands of dollars, and you have the floor space, and you don't have neighbors close by, it's not really a practical option in this day and age. So in my opinion, the next best thing is to go with plugins. We are living at a time with an abundance of high quality amp simulators and plugins for you to download and use. Some of them actually sound very close to the real thing and cost a fraction of the price, especially if you can wait to buy one on a deal like at Black Friday or Cyber Monday or holiday sale. You will also need an audio interface in order to plug your guitar into your computer, but those are getting more affordable as well. And just to give an upfront, transparent example of the cost of these things, I use the Abasi Archetype, Plini X, and Fortin Nameless Suite from Neural DSP, and I think that they all sound awesome and they're good for different situations in which I need different tones. Together, they cost under $200, buying them at a Black Friday sale a few years ago. So if you have the patience to wait, you can get a good deal on them. Now, if you're not ready to invest into a bunch of plugins and audio interfaces, then whatever you have should just be fine as well. There is no need to follow all these trends of YouTubers playing through these expensive plugins if you already have an amplifier that you can just plug into and play through. It may take a bit of experimentation to find a good tone on your amp for an 8-string guitar, but trust me, it is possible. I often just play this beast through a Fender Princeton reverb amp, a classic jazz amplifier with no distortion settings, and it sounds awesome. So in summary, there are tons of options to get a good sound out of your new guitar, but don't fret if you don't want to buy anything new right now. Whatever you have should just serve you fine, and when you're ready to make the jump, all those things will be waiting for you. So you've tuned your guitar to the correct tuning, you've picked your favorite riffs, you have a fresh set of strings on here, and you've plugged into the audio interface or amplifier and you're ready to play, and you go to play something cool and your tone sucks. It's flabby, it's floppy, it's unfocused, it just doesn't sound good like all these heavy bands that you hear on YouTube. So I'm going to give you just a few general tips that are system agnostic so you can use them on an amplifier or a plugin or whatever you're using in order for you to get a good tone. Now these are geared a little bit more toward the metal and rock side of things, but you can still use them as a groundwork for whatever type of music you're playing. And if you're interested in going a little bit deeper into this topic of dialing in tone for your 8-string guitar, let me know in the comments down below and I'll be sure to make a video about it. So first, you do not need as much bass as you think you do for an 8-string guitar. Because our strings are already providing us with these low frequencies, you don't need to dial up the bass knob to make it sound more boomy. The strings have us covered. In most situations, you'll probably actually have to dial it back below 50% in order to get a nice clear tone in your low end. This is actually even more important if you're playing in a band with a bass player, because not only do you have these low strings, but the bass player has a bunch of low frequencies covered on their instrument. And counterintuitively, the more low frequency you have, the less powerful the low end is going to be, because all of those frequencies are going to start canceling each other out. Secondly, on the other end of the frequency spectrum, you're going to want to boost the mids and trebles a little bit more than you normally would. This is especially important if you're playing a lot of low and heavy music, like metal, because it's going to just bring out the higher frequencies and the higher overtones of those low notes that you're playing. And again, it just reduces the muddiness on the bottom end. With the 8-string guitar, we are constantly fighting too much low end. Thirdly, you probably don't need as much gain as you think you do. So experiment turning down the gain knob, turning up the volume knob, and then turning down the volume knob, turning up the gain knob, and see what sounds clearer and heavier. A lot of classic rock players already know this tip, where you turn down the gain and push the amplifier a little bit more to get a more natural sounding distortion. This is going to be useful on the A string here for playing metal as well. You might think less gain, less crunch, less heaviness, but try it out, you might be surprised with what you find. And finally, EQ is your friend. If you have an equalizer built into your amplifier, or you have a plugin that comes with an equalizer in the chain, make use of it. It's super useful for dialing in some of those frequencies that you couldn't quite access on the amplifier, bass, middle, and treble knobs. It'll also allow you to boost some frequencies that are maybe a little lacking. At the end of the day though, just follow your ears and whatever sounds good to you. Don't worry if you think your tone isn't what some random YouTuber on the internet would say is good or heavy or crunchy. Whatever sounds good to you in the moment is going to be good enough for you to have fun and play. Again, if you want to go into this topic a little bit more and maybe learn about what to be listening for and how to listen for these things when you're dialing a tone, let me know in the comments and we'll put it in the next video. Alright, so with all of that, you should be set for at least a few weeks to shred on your favorite riffs and have some fun with your new guitar. Once you start to get that itch, like you want to dive deeper into the instrument and learn some new stuff, make sure you come back to the channel and check out some of the other videos I have about learning scales and riffs and techniques. Many of these videos have free PDFs that you are welcome to download and use in your own practice. If you appreciate what I do on this channel, then remember you can support me by buying me a coffee down in the description below. Keeping me caffeinated makes me happy and allows me to keep making these videos for you guys. If you have specific video ideas you would like to see come up in the future, let me know in the comments down below. Or if you'd like a private lesson to go over some things you're having troubles with, those links can also be found in the description. So with all that said, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day wherever you are, and as always, happy practicing.